and a warm welcome session at the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair, Piracy in Publishing, the Big Issue. My name is Isabel Abul-Hul. I'm the CEO and trustee of the Emirates Literature Foundation, and I'm delighted to be welcoming, joining us virtually, some wonderful speakers. So we have Her Excellency Sheikh Badur Al-Qasimi, who is going to give the keynote address, Richard Charkin, who is the former president of the International Publishers Association, the UK Publishers Association, and for 11 years was executive director of Bloomsbury Publishing. He has held many senior posts at major publishing houses and is the president of the Book Society. Iman bin Chaiba, vice president of the Emirates Publishers Association and founder and CEO of Sale Publishing. Sarah McLean, international sales director from Bloomsbury, and Trevor Naylor, associate director of AUC Press, AUC Bookstores and Rights in Cairo, Egypt. So it is wonderful to welcome, and I wonder if we can see all of our speakers who are joining us on Zoom. Is that possible? Hello, Richard. No. Hello, Trevor.
Hello, good morning.
Can you see us?
Oh, good afternoon.
Hello.
And
good
yes.
afternoon. Yes, and can we see the other speakers, please? Are you all there? Can Richard say hello?
I can say hello, but I can't see myself. Oh, there I am.
You can't see. There you are. You're hiding behind a thing.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, good lunchtime.
It's good afternoon. It's good afternoon in Abu Dhabi at the International Book Fair. Hello, Sarah. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Isabel. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon.
Yes, we're waiting. Iman is going to join us virtually, and we're working on getting her here, but we won't delay any longer. Piracy in publishing. It's a very strange idea that there would be pirates in publishing, although publishing writes a lot about pirates. But before we start, I would love us to see the keynote speech from Her Excellency Sheikh Badur Al-Qasimi, the president of the International Publishers Association. So please, can we show Sheikh Badur's keynote speech now for us all to see? Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak with you today on piracy in publishing. The title you suggested for my keynote, Piracy in Publishing, the Big Issue, fits perfectly. Piracy is indeed a big issue. It is an issue that is threatening the heart of the book industry and the creative industry in general. This issue has been exacerbated by the massive and sudden adoption of digital and online formats by millions of people for their entertainment, reading, research, education, and schooling due to the COVID-19 pandemic. For us publishers, this is a paradoxical situation. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, publishers worldwide stepped up their efforts to support remote learning by giving free online learning materials and provided access to trustworthy research to speed up the development of vaccines. But while we continued fulfilling our vital role in society, publishers were battling another pandemic of their own, digital piracy. The surge of digital piracy is not only threatening the sustainability of the publishing industry, but also the foundations of our societies and our economies. This is a threat that needs to be taken seriously by everyone. As you know, book piracy is not a new challenge. Despite international copyright treaties and national copyright laws, reproducing illegal copies of books has been commonplace. And while robust laws and enforcement mechanisms are important to combat piracy, it's also important to address the culture and mindset encouraging the spread of piracy. We need greater awareness. We need to educate the public from a very young age that downloading a free illegal copy of a book is a crime, like shoplifting. It's that simple. The public needs to also become more aware about the consequences of their actions on the livelihood of everyone involved in the publishing value chain. And we, the publishers, need to become more visible to the end user and educate them about the book production chain. A book is not just an author and a publisher. It's more than that. It's an author, a proofreader, a translator, an editor, an illustrator, a marketer, a publisher, a bookseller, and many others. It's an entire value chain of people who work hard every day to put books in the hands of readers, to inspire, educate, and entertain. And piracy is threatening their livelihoods and threatening publishers' ability to continue to invest in publishing high-quality literature, technical works, and educational textbooks. Examples of revenue losses resulting from piracy are abundant. In Italy, for example, in a 2020 study by the Association of Italian Publishers and the Federation of Italian Newspapers, revealed some shocking statistics highlighting the damage done by piracy in the Italian market. It reported an annual loss of some 528 million euros to the book industry, an aggregate of 1.3 billion euros when combined with news publishing, accounting for as much as 23% of the market. These are also losses to the economy in terms of tax income, employment, and the threat it poses to academic research. This is just one example. I think we can all imagine the extent of the damage on the global scale. Given the overwhelming number of pirated books downloaded and shared every day, some publishers may feel helpless, frustrated, or, as American writer Kate Messner said, they may feel they're trying to catch Niagara Falls in a teacup. But I believe that effective protection against piracy is possible, with strong national strategies and vigorous enforcement tools. There are several countries that have robust and modernized copyright laws, providing appropriate protection for copyrighted works and establishing adequate and effective enforcement mechanisms. If some governments are successful in fighting piracy, then it's possible for every government to do the same with the right commitment and methodology. In the International Publishers Association, the protection and promotion of copyright is one of our key objectives. We work closely with our member associations to ensure that they have the most updated copyright laws and practices to protect their works. We also offer training, advice, and best practices to support the modernization of national copyright laws. We do so with the belief that secure copyrights are foundational to a prosperous, modern economy. In that spirit, we launched the Ipa Global Report on Copyright and Publishing in October 2020 with the aim of helping Ipa members learn about how other countries tackle piracy and copyright challenges. We will continue defending copyright protection vigorously because we believe that by protecting copyright, we are protecting the diversity of ideas and the greater good of our societies. Thank you again for making room in your program for this vital subject. It's through education, awareness, and collective action that we can combat piracy and defend our societies from its damaging effects. I wish you all the best for the rest of the program, and I look forward to hearing your ideas and discussions.
Thank you so much to Her Excellency Sheikha Badur for her thought-provoking keynote speech. We'll be developing the theme she has just talked about, looking at all aspects of content piracy, why it's wrong, and what publishers and authors can try and do about it. The massive growth of ebooks, online publishing, and changes in buying patterns have seen a huge upsurge in piracy. So what is it? Basically, it is the illegal acquisition of content without the copyright holder's permission. For example, by photocopying your friend's college textbook, buying an offset copy of a popular trade book, or downloading a PDF of an ebook. I would like to turn to our experts, and could we ask Richard Charkin if he, hello Iman and welcome, lovely to see you. Could I ask Richard to start off the conversation about what you think are the routes to stopping piracy or reducing piracy to a bare minimum, including parallel imports?
Good afternoon, everyone. That's a pretty tough question, or at least to answer in a few minutes. Can I start with an example, which may not be in the front of most of this audience's heads, but I think is a very good example of piracy. It's a company, a business, called Sci-Hub, S-C-I-H-U-B. It was founded in 2011 by a lady called Alexandra Elbakayan. She was a scientist, and she thought that it would be a good idea if all the scientists in the world could have access to all published material free of charge with no obstructions whatsoever. This is, in my view, as I've said in a little note, burglary. It's a bigger business that she is attacking than the whole of general book publishing or educational publishing. It's at the heart of research. Just to give you a sense, last year, 2 billion scientific papers were downloaded free of charge from her website. She has been sued in more or less every major territory, in the United States, in Germany, in the United Kingdom, even in China, and indeed in Russia, where she comes from. And yet none of these cases have been able to stop her. She's being fined tens of millions of dollars, but she doesn't pay. She moves her URL from one country to another. She changes things. She's 35 years old. She's very clever. And she is threatening the livelihood of all the major academic publishers in the world. This is big time. This is existential, in my view. And it may seem distant from the piracy of Obama's memoirs or the piracy of an Indian textbook, but it is all the same thing. It is copyright which is at the heart of our industry. And more than just losing money, organizations like Sci-Hub undermine everyone's understanding of what an author's rights are. And they are the right to be quoted, to do what they want with their copyright material. That is the fundamental. It's very straightforward. Do I think there are things we can do? Yes, there are. We have to be utterly vigilant all the time. We must not take for granted any breach, any theft is theft, and this is real theft. I don't think, if I'm allowed to say this, Isabel, that territorial copyright is as big an issue as the fundamental right of copyright. And I do think that territorial restrictions are wane as we move into a much more global world. So I won't address that if I may, but I would like to leave you with the thought that every theft of every piece of copyright material is a form of vandalism. And we should resist it. We, the publishing industry, but not just us. We, the librarians, we, the booksellers, we, the subscriptions, we, the author community. This is one area where we are absolutely aligned, or should be. And I would ask you all to look at this Sci-Hub maybe just look it up on Wikipedia to get some sense of how big a deal this could be. So there's my 2 minutes, if I'm right.
Thank you so much, Richard. I'd never heard of that, and it is terrifying that she's moving from country to country, big countries, and no one is able, seemingly, to stop her. So I'd like to welcome Imam bin Chayba, and what are your views on piracy in publishing?
Thank you so much, Isabel, for the introduction, and thank you guys for having me for the session. Piracy has been very challenging in a lot of ways, digital piracy specifically, because like in the Arab world, it has been even much more. Like we have seen it even done on books that are even for the royal family and big VIPs. The moment the book is out, the second day or third day, the book is actually not only on a website being available, it's actually being circulated as a PDF on WhatsApp, on all groups and to everyone. So I think like people really take it to a far level and to the next level when they go with that. And specifically, like you guys have mentioned, because people don't understand that this is a theft. They don't understand that you are now stealing a product without paying for it. And they generally, they're like, no, but I didn't steal anything physical. And that's why we keep trying, at least as publishers from our side, and whenever we get the chance to tell them, you have taken the digital copy, and because of that, you are not buying the print copy, and that is how you're stealing. And I think it's about simplifying it to them in that kind of layman terms for them to get how severe is this stealing aspect is, because generally they think, I didn't steal anything physical, whatever did not harm anyone, I did not steal something from a bookshop. And I was like, yeah, but in technicality, because of what you've done, you're not going to a bookshop and you're preventing so many people you've just forwarded the book to from going to the bookshop. According to that, a publisher cannot make money. According to that, a publisher cannot pay the author. According to that, a publisher cannot stay in business enough to continue creating more books. So that's what we've been dealing with. And a lot of times what we've heard, at least in the Arab world, is that as opposed to in US and in Europe and so on, Google does help a little bit in preventing those websites, the forums that actually publish the PDFs of the books. In the Arab world, it doesn't do that job. They don't exactly filter or block those websites from showing on Google results, which has been a complaint by a lot of the publishers in the Arab world and the union of the Arab publishers. All of them have been trying to complain a lot to Google to at least block those websites from popping on the results. And we were more than willing to actually give them the list of current websites that are doing that, but they haven't been that much responsive. So those are two of the points. And the last point I'd like to mention, which was very interesting to me, is that a lot of times cultural figures from within our community, and we're talking even from within the country, we're not even talking outside, people from within the community that are cultural figures with senior positions in cultural authorities would see a book and then, they share a PDF of it and say, this is to generalize knowledge for everyone. And I'm like, if you are a person this senior and you don't get the gravity of what you're doing, how am I expecting anyone else to get it? Like the book for Jokh al-Harthi, if you remember when the translation of her book got the book award, the amount of times I saw it on Twitter being leaked as a PDF was unbelievable. A lot of times where people who are from the industry, are from cultural authorities, are actually big authors as well, circulating the PDF. And I'm like, if you guys do this, what did you leave for the rest of the world? So yeah, those are the things I have on my side.
Thank you so much, Iman. And it is really a very deep, ingrained issue in publishing that seems to have got worse and worse with digital and other things. Trevor, can we go to you next and get some of your ideas about piracy in publishing?
Hello. I was pondering this morning which of my various hats to wear for this, and I think today I'm mostly talking as a bookseller to give real life examples of how this affects people. I'm sitting here actually above one of our stalls in the middle of Tahrir Square, and literally I can look out my office window and see a guy across the road on the pavement selling books. We're attempting to sell in our bookshop for a third of the price. Terrible quality. But you know, it's like a warning to publishers. The worst thing you can do is get on the bestsellers list, because the moment you do, your market starts to get unpicked in front of you. We're fortunate in that we have specializations, high-level specializations relating to books about Egypt, but the general best-selling books, business, self-help, development, fiction that people want to buy en masse here are universally pirated. And aside from a very small kind of layer of society, and also people, visitors, expats living here who want to have the genuine book, everybody else is going to that market. And it's worrying that we've reached a point now where it's not a case of us and them so much as, when considering our business planning, that part of the market, we've kind of given up fighting it. We'll take the best of what's left, but in context, there's that market, there's our marketplace, our bookshops, and our university community that we service as well, where even there we have textbook piracy for sure going on. And also online, you know, we have souk.com, which is an Amazon company, have been openly selling pirated Arabic books on their sites to all the vendors for years now. Amazon are going to come into Egypt, I believe, on a promise of ending that. But it's very much the case that it's beyond people being shocked, surprised, or disappointed. It's just one piece of the marketplace that we all operate alongside or within. And to end that, you're going to have to go a long way deep into publishing associations, and somebody somewhere has really got to get hold of the people who are behind it, because they're never clear. It's a very opaque but very big business in a country like this, where you have vastly different levels of income. At the same time, as an educational establishment and working in the university, to me, I'd like as many people to read some of these books as possible. So I feel a bit sort of torn occasionally to think, okay, there's some books here that those people would never buy at the price which is the normal price. How do we find a mechanism of making them available legitimately at that price and force these other people out of the market? I don't know if that's possible or not, but fighting them at their own game may be the only way to do it.
Thank you so much, Trevor, for your words of wisdom and for the fact you can actually see piracy going on from your window in Tahrir Square. So I think, Sarah, you probably have a different viewpoint. Certainly out of your window, you're not able to see the pirates there on the street outside. But tell us about your views on piracy in publishing, and you know, is there any way that this can be stamped on, because it does seem to be endemic everywhere, a bit like COVID?
Right. Yeah, I'm just listening, very interested in what everyone's saying. Obviously, I'm coming from a publisher perspective and from the trade perspective, less education. But I think, just echoing what has already been said, really, that a lot of this has to do with the value that we place on books, I think, and to echo Her Excellency, that really it's about educating people to understand what value there is in a book, whether that's digital or print or audio, whatever format that book comes in, that the copyright stretches to all formats and that value stretches to all formats. Because I think that perhaps that value has been reduced in terms of people's expectations over recent years. The book is still an incredibly cost-effective way of entertaining oneself. There's a lot of effort that goes into the production of all books, wherever they're published and by whomever, in terms of marketing, editing, etc. But I'm not sure that gets across to the consumer always. So I think that's a big job that needs to be ongoing, to really sort of make sure that people understand what that value is and appreciate it. So I think that's one of our biggest issues. I also think that actually the online retailers that Trevor mentioned, not necessarily our biggest online retail friend, but all online retailers have, and all sites do have a responsibility to help us to protect that copyright. And I'm not sure how we close that gap either, but it's perhaps a question to chuck out there for everyone else.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we're aware, perhaps not of the complete scale, but certainly that it is everywhere in the world you can get pirated editions as PDFs, as downloads, as books illegally printed or print runs additional that the printer's done and then sells them. What can the industry do, Richard, to actually have a global force where, you know, the steps are taken to catch the perpetrators everywhere?
I don't think. I mean, one of the problems we face is that legal action is dictated by domestic law. So the idea of a global approach legally is probably not doable or feasible. If the Delhi library case, for instance, was eventually arbitrated under Indian law, the Google Library project, which I got involved in at one stage, goes through the US courts. So I'm not sure there is an international. The nearest thing we have is the International Publishers Association working in Geneva with the various copyright organizations to ensure that their voice is heard globally. I'm not sure there is an alternative. I do wish, though, that author societies were a little bit more outspoken. There's a lot of blame of publishers by authors for allowing things to happen, but rather less, I think, support for the publishers from the author community. They wouldn't say this, but I think more action from both international and national author societies would be really helpful. Because one of the problems we have is, as Trevor was saying, many people, for instance, in the academic world, rather like the idea of free or cheap intellectual property, and who can blame them? The various efforts we've tried to do, like, for instance, on the scientific publishing, there are huge discounts being granted to libraries in emerging economies, or indeed free. And increasingly, the open access movement, which allows it to be free, but nonetheless, Sci-Hub is stripping away the core business. And I think we just have to educate the author community as well as our own community that copyright is in their interests, and it really is. Even if they want to give away the stuff for free, it still has to be within a copyright environment.
Iman, do you think ebooks have led to a big upsurge in piracy?
I want to get back to this point in a bit, but I want to comment on something that Richard said, which is on point when it came to authors being educated on the importance of copyright. Because what I've heard recently around here, at least in our region, is that a lot of authors have been putting the PDFs of their book they have received from the publishers at the end to review before printing. They've been using those PDFs and putting them on their website and circulating them because they were like, we're not getting any money anyway. We might as well circulate it and get it out there because we want people to know our work. So exactly what Richard has mentioned, that we need to educate them on the importance of copyright, and that the more you do this, the less money you're likely to get back to start with. So yeah, definitely that's an important point. You were saying whether the ebook has actually been leading to an increase in that. Actually, I remember a few years ago, I was attending a session in London Book Fair, and they were discussing this exact point. And actually, they were showing in data and in research points, and the benchmark were two things. I think it was in China and I think as well in UK. And the benchmarks were on two different industries, was on music and on film and movies. So they were saying, actually, the more you create a platform that is easily accessible, that is cheap, and that has everything that the consumer wants without having to struggle to find it, the more likely people are going to go less to piracy and actually going to use that platform. But the thing is, we don't have that in the Arab world. So when you're talking about, when we say it's like, oh, the Arab reader is not interested in digital reading, it's very unfair of a statement, because in technicality, when we're talking about digital reading, we're talking about Kindle, we're talking about Apple Books. Sometimes you could mention Nil and Furat and you could mention Abjad. But in reality, let's focus on Kindle and Apple Books. Apple Books is limited. It doesn't even allow our publishers to go on it. It doesn't even allow a person who is in the Middle East address to actually access the iBooks. So you have to play the system basically and put a US address or UK address to have access. When it comes to Kindle, unfortunately, it has been limited on so many ways. So first of all, even a publisher from US and UK cannot publish their books and have it accessible in the Middle East market of Kindle. Not everyone, it's a very limited number of publishers who are allowed to publish their Kindle books on the Middle East market. It's a special platform. It's by invites only. And some of the Arab publishers have been having access to it. So when we're talking about how limited it is, then I can't say, oh, the Arab reader doesn't want to read Kindle. I'm like, no, you haven't even provided them with a fair market. Like at the very beginning, when Kindle started back in 2008, 2009, a lot of us refrained back from it because the market space was very limited. The books were not published on the same day. So automatically we were like, no, I would prefer going to the bookshop and getting my book as opposed to waiting for a month or so. The same thing with the market on Kindle. So we can't say that this has done this because we're not even there yet when it comes to the ebook market for at least the Arab world.
Thank you, Iman. That's really interesting. I just felt that maybe ebooks, with the rise of ebooks, that piracy was becoming easier, but that's just an opinion rather than a knowledgeable fact. Trevor?
I think it's probably true that electronic versions of educational books, where anybody can find a way to crack through that, have given people a chance to bypass traditional methods, let's say. I think the rise of the Kindle, etc., is a different issue for booksellers in markets like this one, where actually what they do is they allow our customers to simply bypass this market entirely. So my view on Kindle is that if the author gets something from it because they're buying it that way, that's good. But it's been it's been a bad thing in general for booksellers in export markets, because people have no choice but to either wait a long time for the book to come or to get it the next day delivered to their device. So I don't think it's caused problems in piracy. I think it's actually caused problems for people selling things in international markets, because it allows people to bypass the market entirely if they have access to a dollar or sterling credit card and can buy anything they want from anywhere. The issue we've had on the textbook side, it was this halfway technology, which some of you I'm sure know about, which is textbooks being supplied as access codes to information rather than as physical textbooks. The distribution model is the same. We buy the access code as if we buy a textbook, and we sell it to the student, and the student accesses it for a limited amount of time. That's been fairly effective, I think, in stopping some of the issues we had, which is 12 or 15 students get together, photocopy a chapter each, and between them we've got the whole book. Access codes have helped stop that because they have interactive elements, which mean you have to have it in order to complete the course. But again, you need people to stand up and say, you have to use this. And in this case, that's the lecturers. The lecturers have to say, you cannot come to class without this. And there are people who do that, and there are other people who will say, no, these books are too expensive that way. Find another way to it, and then you can come to class. So every way you look, there are people who are aiding and abetting, so we say the theft that Richard talks about. And in between are those of us who are trying to make an honest living out of books and provide a good service. It's not easy.
No. Sarah, do you think the general public is not aware of the reasons why piracy in publishing is so dire for the industry as a whole?
I think that's absolutely right. I don't think the general public knows, and if they do, there's a proportion of the general public that definitely doesn't care necessarily. I'm not sure. I think publishing is quite an opaque industry, if I'm being completely honest. I think a lot of people don't know about the publishing industry, even if they are consumers of books. They don't understand the processes that go into producing a book and the amount of effort that goes in, not just from the author, but then subsequently with marketing, etc., and the money that goes into publishing a book well globally and in multiple markets. And I think that the less opaque publishing is, perhaps the more the public would be aware of how much actually goes into it and the effort. And I think as well, it does put those markets at risk where we are selling books at a lower price, whether that's parallel importing or however that may come into other markets, because it means that publishers are forced then to publish fewer books, and it means that they take fewer risks, which I think makes everything a lot more boring. I think it's a very big question.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly had as a bookseller, lots of instances of parallel importing, particularly from India, where books were sold into the Indian market and it said specifically for sale in India only, which was then blacked out with a little black pen on every copy, and they were sold at the same price as if they'd been purchased internationally, and it was impossible to stop it. So it meant that any importers or wholesalers who were doing that had huge benefits, and it's still that is still happening. And I don't know how publishers, maybe they're going to stop offering preferential rates for certain countries. What do you think, Richard?
Well, of course, there was this huge case in the United States of, I think he was a Thai student, a student from Thailand, who moved to America, discovered that there were low price editions of McGraw-Hill and similar textbooks available in Thai, very cleverly imported them and sold them to all his students and built up a business of quite a few $100,000 a year. The result was that Asian editions of McGraw-Hill textbooks ceased to be published and thus encouraged piracy. So it's a really, really difficult thing to deal with. And as I said earlier, the scientific journal publishers give huge discounts, but it still doesn't seem to stop the piracy.
No.
I think we really have to get to the core of this, recognizing that this is burglary or theft or piracy, and it is a crime. It is a true crime.
It is a crime, and I think if it's recognized and acted on in each country, that uphold intellectual property and copyright, then they have to act harder to sort of find and investigate those who are breaking the law and bring them to justice. And there has to be a few scapegoats for people to actually understand that they can't get away with it. Because, you know, if you bought a book in a bookshop and it had blacked out for sale in India only, and you bought it for a cheaper price, you're still buying it. And so you're going to say, well, you know, I'm benefiting as a consumer, I'm still paying money. But it's the whole understanding of how publishing the industry works, and, you know, why certain countries would have different price structures, or why, as you said, with this case with the Thai student, where that led to an upsurge in real piracy, where they weren't even buying the, you know, the special price editions, as it were. So do you think there's going to be, with the world, with COVID, whether any attention can be brought to bear by governments to clamp down on piracy in a stronger way for books?
Can I answer that, at least
Yes,
on behalf
please.
of the British
Yes.
government?
Yes.
The British government is so thoroughly incompetent. I think even if they wanted to clamp down on it, they would fail. They also have other things on their mind, like their own potential problems. So I think relying on governments, at least in the West, is probably not going to be very useful. I think we have to rely on ourselves. And it may be we have to spend some money on marketing to get our message across, which we've not done hitherto.
Good, very good point, Richard. Thank you. Iman, more about marketing and making the public aware about stealing.
I think that's a possibility, but that's not the only thing we can do. I know that Sharjah Book Capital have tried to do that last year, where they launched a campaign to actually educate people about the negative side of piracy, and how they even did a very nice video where they showed like people stealing books, or, you know, downloading the EPUB or the PDF and so on, and how that actually ended up removing Harry Potter from our life, removing the essential literature figures from our life because they ceased to exist as businesses and so on. So that was the thing, but how much can you push? You're talking about something that has to eradicate a whole mindset that is there in the entire community. The other aspect of it that I kind of believe in is the legality and punishment. So I think we're not there yet, actually. I don't think, like, I know we're not there yet. We have a saying in Arabic that says, "Man amina al-uquba asa al-adab," which means that who secures that they will not be punished, they will misbehave. And I believe that because we, as a lot of anyone who circulated PDF, anyone who's done anything knows that they will not be punished. So they keep going on with it. But like we've put laws that you cannot curse on someone, you cannot defamation laws and whatever, and even higher versions of them. Now that we have those and people actually get punished for them and get fined like 10,000 dirhams, 15,000 dirhams, if we start to trace it the same way when it comes to digital books, and we can trace, for instance, we can report it to the police like we report someone who's cursing you on WhatsApp. You can report a book being created as PDF on WhatsApp or Telegram or whatever there is, and they get traced back to all the way to the person who started it, and all of them get fined. Time by time, people will stop doing it. At least we're talking about the public community that we have here within the country, and we can't, as a country, we can't do something about the people who do it in at least the other GCC, the other Arab countries. But let's start somewhere within our country, and then hope that others are going to pick it up when they see the benefit that comes out of putting such kind of firm laws and firm punishment in enactments.
Trevor, in Cairo, in Egypt, what can you do to stop piracy?
I think the issue here is it's bigger for the Arabic publishers now than it is for international publishers. You know, there's a lot of publishing, particularly fiction, but other memoirs, biographies and stuff, done in Arabic, and the same issues are faced by Arabic publishers, even though their books are already, you know, extremely competitive. Again, the moment they have a best-selling book, it can be available, particularly if it's a book published in Arabic from outside Egypt. It can be available here very, very quickly indeed, and immediately it gets eaten away at. And I've been on panels, I've talked to a lot of my friends who are Arabic publishers and also booksellers. They too can't get to the bottom of where these books come from. This is the thing, even in their own country, being able to trace the real route back to who's behind it. And it makes you throw your hands up in despair as to what can you do. You can protest all you like. If you try to, you can't fight them on price. There's no way that anyone can live with the quality that they're producing them at and being able to make those prices. There have been many cases of Publishers Association and the Egyptian Publishers Association talking about ways to sign the right documents and stand up. But whatever they do, the actuality of it won't change. Here it's still very, very led by the physical book. It's not so much digital editions being sold online. These are books sold, as I say, on street corners, every street corner that you go to. So it's an embedded element of the marketplace that those of us selling imported books, and indeed as publishers ourselves, have to work around finding niche audiences, finding people to get our books to, and hoping that there are enough people who want the quality to be able to do it. It makes you despair. I think there's an attitude, not just here, but this is a worldwide attitude that I see, where buying original content for a very large number of people is the purchase of last resort. Comparing publishing to Premier League football, if somebody wants to see an important game tonight, they will do everything they can to see it for free. And if they cannot find it any other way, then they will pay for it. And that's the attitude with textbooks, it's the attitude with a lot of books, it's the attitude with a lot of content. So the words I've heard here about education are really important, that this is embedded in people's understanding from an early age. You are stealing. You are damaging the economy. You may be even damaging your own prospects in the future if you're interested in books. And it's a long journey, because what I see in our stores here, particularly people visiting Egypt, say they're traveling through, they go and see the pyramids. They want to buy a book. This is a generation, my generation. They want to buy a book and take it home with them to read to their grandchildren. Yeah? Because they really still believe in books. What is the generation below that going to feel in the years to come? Will they still have that attitude? Or will they have moved entirely towards find it where you can online? It's a battle we have to keep fighting, and we have to keep really going at it constantly, or else it'll become the normal.
Yes. So Sarah, is it going to mean that there's going to be a lot less selection, a lot less risk taken publishing because of the inroads that pirated books are making on the profits of both publishers and royalties of authors?
I think it is inevitable as it grows. I was interested in what people were saying about ebooks versus print books, because I don't think it's the ebook that is impacted, but it is technology that's made distribution of those PDFs and those digital files so much more widespread, which obviously is a lot harder to clamp down on in some ways. So yeah, and just down to the fact that it's so much easier now to scan a book extremely cheaply and create your own PDF. You don't even need to get it from someone else. You can make one, quite easily. But it's about, really, I think what Trevor said, knowing right from wrong and teaching that and making it really clear that it is stealing from the author. And I think it's more so that than stealing from the publisher, who focus on their domestic markets as it is anyway. I think it makes it much harder in the international markets. So yeah, I think inevitably it does mean that people in publishing take fewer risks on titles because they've got less money to do so, essentially.
That's a really, really good point. And, you know, publishing as an industry is going to be poorer if piracy is not tackled. I think we're all agreed on that. I've got a question from Hilda Yusuf, who's tuning in online. As a Dubai-based author, I found it very difficult to find writers, publishers, community locally based. Where does a local UAE author go to find the information they need? Iman, one for you.
All right, there are a few places. There's obviously the Writers Union, but I'm not sure if they have a physical presence, but they can always reach out to them on social media and try to get some kind of answers, because they try to look out for all the authors in terms of rights and everything when it comes to contracts and so on. That's from a very official response. But to me personally, I've always found that kind of community of writers, of publishers and so on, and Emirates Literature Festival every year in Feb, when all the sessions happen, really is the best place to connect with and network with all the authors. And there's always a day for publishers where they can also reach out to them and actually communicate with them. So I think that's the golden opportunity.
I think so. I think coming to any book fairs, going to literary festivals, joining book groups, you will find in every place, you will find, Hilda, we're speaking to you, you will find like-minded people and connections that way. That's probably a good thing to do. So we're going to be finishing quite soon, so I would like to ask each of our eminent speakers if they would like to end up with a key point or points about what we can do collectively as an industry to start to turn the tide of piracy in publishing. So Richard, we're going to start with you. We're going clockwise around how I can see you on the screen.
I think one area that we haven't touched on, oh, sorry, am I muted?
No, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, okay. Well, one area we haven't touched on is the importance of collecting agencies. These are the agencies who collect money from libraries, etc., for copyright material. The reason that they're important in this argument is the easier it can make it possible to license, the better off, the more that copyright will be protected. So I think signing up to the various licensing organizations, I'm not sure what you have in the UAE, but I'm sure there is something, and signing up to that and supporting them helps us to be seen to be reasonable, not greedy, sensible protectors, defenders of copyright. So I would leave that thought with you.
I think that's a really good point, and something we've not touched on is the agencies. So in the United Kingdom and probably in the US too, every time a library book is borrowed, a payment goes to a royalty payment goes to the author. Is that correct, Richard?
That's correct, but that's not really what I'm talking about. That's a public lending right from a library.
Okay, right.
What I'm talking about is the Copyright Licensing Agency, which is the British one.
Yes.
And there are various American and Australian and Indian ones, for the collection of income for the use of minute pieces of information, frequently 2 pages or a chapter, or simply a 1,000 words, where you can pay to be legal, and it's easy. It's not a barrier. It's easy. So that's really what I was referring to.
Thank you for clarifying that for me. I was mixed up with the library use. Iman, what gem would you like to share with us about how we are going to turn the tide and stop those pirates stealing?
I think, first of all, what Richard was saying is actually something that right now they're working at in the UAE, the Copyright Licensing Agency, and it's been at works for at least 2 years. It's still not being launched at as a center. It's been worked at as a committee under the International Publisher Association, and they're working with the EPA to actually work on an agency licensing for that, not only for academic works, but that's the first focus right now, the academic, and then they also want to later on have a section under it for music and film and so on. So that is the goal. I believe it's going to be a bit hard because the culture is not there, but I think that's the work that they're going to work on. From our side of what we can do, I really, really believe that we have to constantly keep rallying and lobbying and explaining for the public copyright piracy, digital piracy. PDF is a piracy. And let's not even use the word piracy. Let's just use it as it is, theft. Because I think specifically for the Arab reader, when you tell them theft, they freak out because you're now touching on a core ethic that they have and they believe that they don't do. So I think it's really about reusing that over and over time. I think it will get there as a point.
Really, really good point. Trevor, how do you think we're going to make at least a dent and start to reduce and turn the landslide in the other direction?
Yeah, well, you can come at this from the outside in, which is, the reader into publishing, and you can also talk about it from the publisher outwards. And my experience over a long time now, I would have to say that I think publishing is too nice, and we have a habit of knowing things and hoping someone else will deal with it. If we're really serious, we should be naming people, and there should be a place that where that happens, people who see it will think that's a serious voice, and that those people are going to do something about it. And it's been a circular conversation for far too long. As I say, if we were in another medium, some of the things we've put up with would never have been allowed to happen.
Good point, Richard. Trevor, thank you so much. Sarah, more from the trade books angle, what do you think can we come up with that will aid publishers to stop piracy and theft?
I would say we all need to remember to be good citizens, and we need to call out bad things when we see them. We need to not participate in sharing PDFs or downloading free ebooks ourselves, and we need to call it out when we do see it and remind people that it is not okay, and stop being so perhaps I should revise that message to something a bit stronger than it's not okay, but we should stop being so nice. And I think we just need to keep reminding people in our lives, if we see it happening, we should call it out and ask them to stop.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I would like to close today's session on piracy in publishing, the big issue. And I think one thing we're all agreed on, it is a big issue, and it's not yet being tackled efficiently and effectively in countries around the world to stop it. So this was a tiny foray into it. I'd like to thank Her Excellency Sheikha Badur bint Mohammed Al Qasimi for the wonderful keynote speech where she addressed so many of the issues. And as the president of the International Publishers Association, as she said, this is one of the key challenges and issues that they tackle again. And I think having a wonderful panel with Richard Charkin, Iman bin Shaiba, Trevor Naylor and Sarah McLean, all from different areas of publishing in different parts of the world almost, has been really, really insightful for both our audience here and for the audience who've been tuning in online. I would thank you all and wish you a very pleasant remainder of your day. And Iman, I'm so sorry you weren't here with me on the stage, but we had technical issues and you'd whizzed back to the hotel to get online, and so I'm here on my own. And I would have welcomed you on the stage.
I would love to give you a company. I'm so sorry. But thank you so much for what you've done. A remarkable job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care, stay well, and look forward to meeting in person, I hope before too long. All the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.